Welcome to another episode of Out of the Spirit Box with Avani, Heather, and Vale. Today we're talking about the Warrens, yet again.
Alright. February 16, 1981, Arne Cheyenne Johnson brutally murdered Alan Borno, and it's the only fact involved that everyone in the story agrees on. So in an article published in the Washington Post called By Demons Possessed, they interviewed Wanda Johnson, which is Arnie's sister, and she tells about what happens that day. So she says that Arne called into work sick that day, and that Wanda, who's 15 at the time, her sister Janice, who's 13, and their cousin Mary, who's 9, and then Debbie, who is Arnie's fiance, all went to Brookfield boarding kennels, which is where Debbie worked. And Alan Borno was the manager of the kennels. So his sister owned the kennels, she lived in Florida, and had him manage them, and then he lived in the apartment above them. So he took them all for lunch, and she says that he drank a lot of red wine at lunch, Alan did, and that he often drank a lot. After lunch, they went back to the kennels. Arne repaired Alan's stereo for him, and then she said that Alan was playing the stereo really, really loud. Debbie left with the girls to go get pizza and then kind of rushed back. But Wanda remembers Debbie kind of being concerned that there was going to be trouble. So once they got back, Alan kind of ushered everyone up to his apartment, and then he turned the TV on. Wanda said it was really loud again. And he started, punching his fist into his palm. So Debbie started kind of urging everybody to leave. And Wanda says as Mary was trying to leave, who is the 9-year-old, Alan grabbed her by the arm and wouldn't let go. So Debbie went to try and get Mary away. She got him to let go, but Arne had seen what was going on and went back to help. And Wanda said this is kind of when everything, she describes it as just broke.
When shit hit the fan.
Exactly. So she said the children ran to the car, Debbie stood between Alan and Arne, and Wanda was trying to hold on to Arne, and she said he was almost immovable. And he was growling like an animal, and then she saw something shiny flash in the air, and then everything stopped. He walked into the woods staring straight ahead. And then Alan was standing there for just a minute or a second, and then he fell straight to the ground. And Arnie's knife was on the ground. So Alan had been stabbed and slashed 4 to 5 times, including a wound that extended from his stomach to the base of his heart.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm. You must have read the same article.
Wikipedia. I think it was.
Oh, no. I used the Washington Post.
Heather, great investigator.
That was my starting point, okay?
So, Arne claims that he doesn't remember any of this, and it was demonic possession that caused him to kill Alan. Was he really possessed, though? That's the question.
Are we gonna find out?
We're going to try and find out. I have twists, I have turns. Okay, so this all started because of Debbie's brother, David Glatzel, who was 11. So the Warrens became involved in 1980. They were contacted by Father Dennis, who was the pastor at St. Joseph Church in Brookfield, Connecticut. And he told them about the Glatzel family and their son David, whom he believed David's case was one of demonic possession and had concerns about getting involved. The way that Lorraine described it was that she believed that he was concerned something demonic would attach itself to him, and he was getting ready to go visit his mother, and he didn't want it to impact his mother, is what she thought. So Father Dennis also told, and this part of the story is all from the Warrens' point of view.
Okay.
So Father Dennis told Lorraine and Ed that David had a slight learning disability, so they invited Dr. Jim Grasso to go with them on their first visit to the home because his son had a similar learning disability. So they thought he'd be able to tell, like, if it was a medication that David was on that was attributing to his behaviors. But after examining him, Dr. Grasso knew that his learning disability wasn't severe enough to require medication. He was not on medication. And ultimately, the Warrens ended up determining he was in the beginning stages of demonic possession. So when they talk about arriving to the house that first night, they tell a story about Ed kind of tripping when he's going up the steps. And the doctor kind of making like a, just like a little laughing comment. And then he tripped as well. Which they kind of made sound sinister, but I really didn't take it as that.
It sounds like such a dumb little anecdote.
Right?
It's like, oh, instant karma. He tripped, and then he made fun of him tripping.
Right.
And he tripped too.
Yeah. To me, that's kind of exactly what it was. But the way that, like, they added it into the story, they really, like, it almost felt like they were trying to set the scene that this was a spooky haunted house.
The demon tripped them.
From jump. Yeah, really. So they sat down at the table with the family, and Lorraine just, talks about David sitting at the table, kind of drawing, and then at one point he looks up and she says, like, she no longer saw an 11-year-old boy, like, it looked like he was totally gone. And they noted his behavior, like, his strange behavior typically started around 11 p.m. Remember that for something much later. He would become erratic, rant and rave, yell, shout obscenities, speak in other languages, become extremely strong. Ed said sometimes he required 4 to 5 adults to hold him down. Once he says he attacked his mom, who was described as being very devoted to, and in one incident he supposedly even broke her nose. Ed said he had seen David rolling around, throwing fits, and even saw him levitate once.
It just 11 p.m. That's a late-ass bedtime.
So, Arne, who was engaged to Debbie, the Warrens said would help to control David. At the time, he was 18 years old, and he would go to work in the morning, come home, eat, rest, then wake up at 11 and watch over David so that David's parents, Judy and Carl, could rest. Ed and Lorraine described Arne as like an all-American, compassionate, low-key, super respectful kid. And Ed even said, like, if you were going to have a son, he would be the boy you want. So, some of the incidents in the home include Arne telling of a time he was sleeping on the floor next to David's bed. And while he slept, he saw a green bone-like hand coming up through the floor. Which gives me Valheim flashbacks.
Yeah, for real.
Ed also tells this story about a model dinosaur that David had built. And supposedly when he had just finished building it, the model, animated, began walking on its own toward the family and in a deep voice said, "Beware, you're all gonna die." David said he would hear things under possession, such as voices telling him that Arne would fall out of a tree, which apparently happened, but he wasn't seriously injured. And the voices also told him that at the end of the court case, the lights in the courtroom would dim, and supposedly that happened as well. So 2 other priests had come to help since Father Dennis had left. And the total number of priests that ended up on the case, according to the Warrens, was 6. 3 of them were ordained and schooled in Rome. And Lorraine says that they were, like, super frightened of the things Arne would say. So they performed several exorcisms on David. They really only talked about 2 specifically. The first one occurred in St. Joseph's in Brookfield, Connecticut on September 8th. And why did my brain just totally not know how to say that word? In their convent. I wanted to go
I never know how to say words. So.
And I knew it wasn't right. Alright, so this part of the story gets a little wonky, and this is the way I've pieced it together, so I'm not 100% that this is totally accurate. But this is kind of what I pieced together from the way they told it, which was disjointed. So, The morning leading to the exorcism, David went under possession, refusing to get in the car. He got a hold of his knife, tried to kill his mother and grandmother. Ed says that when he arrived at the home, David was in the fetal position on the bed and a priest was standing beside him. Ed told the priest to kind of move back away from the edge of the bed because David tended to swing out and hit those that were standing close. After moving away, David sprung up from the bed, landed on the floor, fled to the bathroom, locking himself in. They then heard hysterical laughter coming from behind the door, and after some time were able to gain access to the bathroom. David was then taken to St. Joseph's for the exorcism. Let's see. Yes.
No, I knocked over my screen and I was catching it.
Oh!
I pushed backwards and almost knocked over the screen. I was like, oh shit! I grabbed it.
I was like, that was a very enthusiastic hand throwing in the air.
That was a question she wanted me to see.
Question? No.
So, Avani, is this one of the... I know that when I was reading about it, they said that while they were trying to obtain permission from the Catholic Church to perform the exorcisms, Ed performed 3 minor ones. Is this one of the minor ones or the major one?
So this later in the research from the story from the family, this was classified as a minor exorcism, but it was not performed by Ed. This one was performed by a priest.
Okay.
So when the Warrens told the story, they never mentioned any exorcisms done by Ed.
Oh, okay.
Because this part of like them telling the story is from an interview of them. Like, this is what they said.
The Warrens.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So, let's see. All right, so they said while the exorcism was being performed at the convent, and remember this because it changes later from the family side. So they said while the exorcism was being performed at the convent, Ed says he went back to the family's home, and using religious provocation, he spread holy water throughout the house. He then said a rocking chair violently moved back and forth, loud pounding sounds occurred in the house, and growling came from the cellar. He said they also heard these noises the first night they were at the home. Yes.
This is at Mary's home or the
family
apartment?
home.
The family home, oh, okay. Got it.
So after this exorcism, they determined they couldn't use the rectory again because it was too loud. Apparently sounds were heard in the adjoining elementary school. Which that is just a hilarious mental image.
Yeah.
Think about an exorcism. Okay, think about a Hollywood exorcism.
Yeah.
Being flying, the shit going crazy. And then little kids. Tiny chillins. Fucking listening to that crazy ass shit. No.
Yeah, I don't totally buy this little bit. They said that the pews, which were bolted down, had hymn books flying off of them, and at one point David broke away from them holding him down and attacked the priest during the process. They did another exorcism, and Lorraine said that the priest who did it was really badly affected by the case. Ed said during this exorcism, he was at his home in his study, and he was calling on the beast, which is what the family referred to as whatever was possessing David, to come to where he was so that he could bind its spirit. So Ed describes it as one of the most frightening experiences of his life. As he called upon the beast, he was instead faced with 43 demons. He describes them as coming at him like a kaleidoscope, one horrible face after another flashing before his eyes. He said he was so stunned he couldn't move. Once he saw it was over 40 demons, he knew it was a hierarchy of the diabolical world. He then left his study knowing he didn't have control over what was happening.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you're getting scared shitless at something you've never seen before, you're taking the time to count.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how fucking intelligent you think you are on the subject. You're really asking demons to come to you?
That,
Yeah, right?
not to mention, like, there's this whole thing about, like, don't invite them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, that a whole thing. You're not supposed to fucking antagonize them to come get you.
110%.
Just a comment.
No, 110%. Alright, so during this, Lorraine was with the priest at the house. She says that when they left the home in the early hours of the morning, they looked like they came out of battle, which she says they did. They spent the entire night in exorcism and prayer, and through the event, Lorraine says she taught David the guardian angel prayer, which she believes brought him comfort. The reverend that was performing the exorcism later tells Lorraine that he left to go back to his own rectory in Norwalk. All right, so he's going back to his rectory in Norwalk to say mass. And he tells Lorraine that after he went to sleep and woke up, his pillow was soaked in blood. Ed and Lorraine say this is an apopore, which through teleportation, so it wasn't the priest's blood, it was blood that dematerialized at one point and rematerialized at another point with intent to frighten the priest. Okay, so the family believed that the demon they called the Beast had been seen in the house and on the grounds of the home, and that's what was terrorizing David. So one night while watching over David, Arne decided to challenge the demon, asking them to take him on and leave David alone. That changes later too. When challenging the demonic, Ed and Lorraine explained that it doesn't always act at a particular time. It waits until you least suspect it, until you're the most vulnerable. When they talked about the case of Alan Borno's death, Lorraine said that she, Ed, and the priest knew that there would be a tragedy. They just never thought it would involve Arne. And they went as far as notifying the police, but they said nothing could be done before the fact. So that brings us to how did they even become possessed in the first place? So the Warrens believe that it all started with a snowmobile trip that David's mother, Judy, and his sister, I believe Debbie, took to upstate New York. Yeah, right? I was like, come on.
What?
Hang in here. It gets better. So the two women met a group of people who seemed friendly enough and invited them back to their home, where they turned on Judy. The group of people is believed to have been involved in satanic activities. Afterward, when Debbie and Arne were looking for a place to rent, David was pushed onto the bed in one home and said he saw an old man in a plaid shirt do it. Later, in the Brookfield house, which is the house they live in, the family home, David said that he saw this old man again in his bedroom, but now he looked burnt and like he had the feet of a deer. This is who they described as the Beast. Yeah.
Okay, so not to be that person, but if a child gets scared by something, they usually have a nightmare about it again. So if he was scared by this old man, it wouldn't be fucking crazy to be like, was seeing the old man again, because that's what scared him.
And
so I
this,
do love the goat feet because
this description changes, and when it changes, it is like, this is the description from the Warrens. The other doc I watched, it is I have the description from David himself, and it is a different description of what he saw.
not Satan.
So
I do want to say, just from the little bit I read about this case, on my way home, I was like, you know what? My best friend's right over in Oregon. Ghosts don't exist.
So, okay. So, Arne has been arrested for the murder of Alan Borno, and his defense is that he was under possession. So the Warrens totally back this up. He was under possession for at least 2 hours. Don't ask me how they came up with 2 hours. And in those 2 hours, he had...
The demon jumped in and they're like, beep, stopwatch. Wait for it, beep, stopwatch.
Yeah. Pretty much. And in those 2 hours, Arne had no idea what happened. That's when he killed Alan Borno. All right, so The court case took place in Danbury, Connecticut, and Arnie's defense lawyer, Martin Manella, submitted a plea of not guilty due to demonic possession, which is the first case in the U.S. history claiming so. And they had witnesses with recordings, the Warrens, priests, eyewitnesses, ready to testify to the things that happened at the house, but the judge never allowed any of the evidence into court. Arnie was found guilty of manslaughter in November of 81, and he was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. Let's see, so the chief of parole for the state corrections department described him as an exemplary inmate, and his mental condition was carefully examined, and they found no negative factors. While in prison, Arnie married Debbie. He was released after only 5 years in prison and remained under state supervision until 1991, and they had 2 children together. Ed and Lorraine completely believe if they had been allowed to present their evidence in court, they could have definitively proven that Arnie was possessed when he killed Alan Borno. And Ed believes that the judge just didn't want to be the guy who allowed the devil made me do it into their courtroom. In 91, they did, however, win a case in LeBron, Connecticut, where a woman fled her home that was haunted by ghosts. Ed also believes the only reason they survived this case is because of protection he had since he was a young boy from the Blessed Mother. And then, like, one little story they tell is that they were showing a group where the exorcism took place in the church, and there was a guy recording them, like, doing the tour, and he caught a voice saying, "Why are you here?" which they think is the same voice that came from David's dinosaur.
It's the same voice from the dinosaur.
Intuitive leap.
Yeah.
So that is the story from Ed and Lorraine's point of view.
I'm so excited for the rest of it. Wait, can you please tell me? Can I get a little teaser here? Can you tell me if you looked up Carl's version?
I did.
Oh, excellent. All right, let's go. Keep going.
That is my truth bomb. All right. So that was all from a YouTube video on Ed and Lorraine's YouTube channel, where they talk about the case. So the next thing I dove into is this year, Netflix released a documentary called The Devil on Trial, which actually interviews the family, like David and his brothers and Arnie.
Was this year?
It released this year.
No shit, I gotta go watch that
So
immediately.
I was like super psyched that I saw this morning and threw this together. So everything in here is from them. It's their words, their story. I just kind of pieced it together. So David says that, like, their family was as normal as you could get. He was a quiet kid. So it was him, his mother Judy, his father Carl, his sister Debbie, who was the eldest and the only daughter, Carl Jr., which was the oldest son, Alan, the middle son, and then David, the youngest. Yes.
Carl Jr. and Hardee's.
Yeah, I know.
First and only thing I thought when I heard that name. Okay.
So, the way David kind of starts out telling this story is that Debbie and Arnie had been searching for a house, and they found a home in July 2nd, 1980. They were moving in, and the family goes along with to help. He says from the minute they arrived, the house felt off to him. And so his sister sent him into the master bedroom to, like, clean up. And he said he could kind of feel or sense something in the room with him. And then he was pushed onto the bed. And he saw what appeared to be a devil. And he described it like someone in a devil Halloween costume with black eyes. And it told him to beware that it was coming for his soul.
Fucking Heather. In the middle of your story, she's like the slowest raise of a fry into her fucking...
Jack just gave me food.
Like, I was like, don't fucking laugh. I couldn't not. Stop ruining the ambience, Heather.
Listen, man, I'm the comedic break intermission shit.
Yeah. So he describes it as like a Halloween devil costume with black eyes, and it told him to beware, it's coming for his soul.
Wait, rewind. What? So who saw the demon?
You want me to do the whole paragraph again?
No.
Okay.
Like, is this the demon of the old man, or
no?
is
This is what.
Okay.
So David says when he's in the room. So he's not saying it's when he's going around with them looking at places. This is the house they chose to move into.
Okay.
And that Arnie and Debbie chose to move into. He's in this room by himself cleaning up. And he said he could kind of feel or sense something in the room with him. He was uncomfortable. And then he was pushed onto the bed. And when what he saw, or says he saw, was someone that looked like a devil. And it almost kind of looked like somebody in a devil Halloween costume with black eyes.
But then, yeah, that was what the Warren said later was an old man pushed him down. But instead, it's a completely different looking thing.
He says it's a completely different
in
looking
a different place.
Well, so they do say in their story that it's in one of the places they were looking at. So just, okay, fine. Let's assume same house.
Okay.
Yeah, he was pushed onto a bed. That aligns. It's really like what he saw is the biggest difference.
Instead of an old man in flannel.
It sounds... Yeah.
With goat feet. It's just like a child's imagination of a devil.
Yeah.
It sounds like, if anything, they were leading him towards what they wanted to describe it as, right?
Well, and not only that, but
he have blackened skin, like maybe he was burned.
Not only that, but if you think about it if you're an 11-year-old kid and you see something you don't understand, you're going to associate it to the closest thing you do understand.
Right.
So, let's just argument's sake say he did see a demon. The closest thing he would understand to associate it to is a Halloween costume.
Right.
Yeah.
Most likely. I mean, we're also talking the 1980s. We're talking Satanic Panic. So...
Yeah, but you're an 11-year-old and you're pretty much just using what you know.
Yeah. So later that night, David says he woke up and he kind of felt like he was being watched and like he could see something coming closer toward the home. And he looked outside and says he saw a figure. I don't know this for sure. The way the doc did it is like they cut to like a toy in his room kind of going off. And then he looked back.
The dinosaur?
No, it was like a fire truck. And then he looked back outside and the figure was gone. I don't know that actually happened because it's never verbally said.
I'm disappointed it wasn't the dinosaur.
I know, right?
I know, me too.
I don't believe the dinosaur thing is true. So he says he looked, he saw it, he looked away, he looked back, it was gone. I don't know why he looked away, if he looked away because he was scared or what. So after this, they said that the mom called Father Dennis to come bless the house. So he came and blessed the house with holy water, holy oil, and incense. And Judy was kind of thinking this will solve the problem, everything will be cool. Until one morning at about 3 a.m., David woke up screaming, "He's coming for me." And then they described the house as shaking with lights flashing and things falling and breaking. And it went on for about 30 to 40 seconds before everything went quiet.
Didn't the Warrens investigate another home? Maybe this was something entirely unrelated, but we did an episode about a house that, like, the people inside were hearing explosions and the whole house shaking and the police outside. Yeah, it's oddly familiar.
Oh, Michigan.
But
Michigan Hell House. Michigan Hell House.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think that was Warren?
No. The
I
Warrens
don't
were
think
not
that was
involved.
Warren, but it had the same feel to it. Same description.
So another thing to jump back to on that dinosaur is, so they did Amityville before this, and in Amityville, there was a claim that a ceramic lion, I believe, was talking.
But
I have no
ceramic.
comments here.
So just a thing to like keep in mind. They've already done Amityville. It's super popular. People know what it is. Already had a media frenzy. So just a thing to keep in mind. Okay, so July 14th, 1980 is the first time the Warrens visit the home, and Judy had contacted them on a recommendation of a neighbor. So that is kind of a little different too, because the Warrens say that the father contacted them, and the family says that a neighbor told the mom, like, oh, hey, I saw these, like, paranormal people at this conference, and you should, like, reach out to them. So I don't know if she was, like...
Actually, in one of the things I read, the priest called the Warrens for them, so...
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. They may have, like, asked
no one
the
knows
priest...
who called the Warrens?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, so they could have talked to the priest, and then the priest could have called.
But also, there's certain details that are, like, not super important.
Yeah.
Like, who fucking called? Was it the wife? Was it the husband? Was it the priest? Was it the neighbor? Who fucking knows?
So, okay, so yeah, so they came... David and Alan both describe Ed and Lorraine as being cautious about how they talked to them and wanting them to answer questions to find out what was going on. And they said that Lorraine was really gentle and precise in what she said.
Goes back to my theory. I believe in Lorraine. I don't really believe in Ed.
Yeah.
So they said, you know, they're right on par. Like, they brought a doctor with him on the first visit who did find David totally normal. During the evening in the home, the family says Ed asked the entity to knock on the table 3 times. And all of a sudden they heard 3 loud bangs, and the kitchen started to shake, the lights flickered. And when Ed asked David if it frightened him, David said it did because it wanted to hurt him and said they would be punished for talking to the Warrens. So after that, they said Lorraine kind of leaned over to Ed and whispered to him that there was a large dark mass next to David that was evil. And that is when they told him it wasn't a ghost in their house, it was a demonic entity. So they advised the family to document everything so that they could submit it to the Archbishop for assistance. So they started, like, recording things with a Polaroid and with a tape recorder. So during their summer vacation, the family's basically taking turns watching over David, sleeping in shifts. And one night, David starts acting really strange. And so what's cool about this Netflix doc is they have the recordings. So they play the actual recordings.
My question is, why did it take you so damn long to fucking start documenting shit?
So, I don't know, because it's the 80s and people don't just have Polaroids and tape recorders
I guess.
in their pockets.
It's not like you can whip out your phone. Also, to that argument, sometimes you see crazy shit and you don't get your phone out in time, and that's in your pocket.
Yeah.
Imagine you have to get a big ass fucking camera or something.
Get it off the closet shelf from the second floor.
Yeah, put it on your shoulder.
Put it all together. You're right.
So in these recordings, obviously you hear, like, the family and stuff talking. You can hear growling. And what they're saying is the demon possessing David, saying you'll die. There's some back and forth between David and his mother on the tape. She's trying to, like, tell it leave him alone and talk to David. You hear some, like, evil laughing. And then Judy ends up telling the family to call the priest. And you also hear Arne on this tape along with the family. Like, they start saying prayers. Like, they just straight up start praying. It's like trauma from school.
Oh, that was in the Netflix thing?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, can you play the clip? And then I was like, you'd have to find it and blah, blah, blah.
It's gone now.
Yeah.
It's copyrighted forever.
Well, I think you can
get away with playing a certain length of a clip and citation.
Yeah.
A lot of things you can't play the whole video, but you can play.
You can also use your phone and record the clip and then insert that, and while the quality is worse, you can get away with it a little bit easier.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, legally lets you play a certain amount of a clip without, getting hit by anything.
Yeah. So the clips they have of Debbie talking, Debbie died in 21. So they do have just a little, like a few little snippets from her. Because I do believe in the past there was an IMDb doc, which I have not yet found. But she says that the whole family was getting physically attacked and they were just like constantly praying. So they talk a lot about how Judy was involved, but the kids said that Carl, their father, is pretty much absent. That he didn't really believe what was going on. He thought David was mentally ill and that the entire family was just feeding into it. He was
like most hauntings. Tell me that most hauntings, the husband or father or whatever is not there. I don't know why this is a trope. For 95% of the time, the husband is not part of this. The man is never there.
Because
everybody else is crazy.
It's the trope that the only person that can protect the family is the man of the house.
I hate that shit.
Hold on. I'm the one who checks the noises with a knife in the middle of the night.
I'm not saying that it's true, Heather. Did you not see the air quotes and hear the sarcasm?
I'm just saying. I mean,
She was sarcastic because we all know the three of us wear the pants in these relationships.
I am getting there first.
I wear a skirt. No, I'm just kidding. Fuck that. It's not enough range of motion. Alright, yeah, so he thought David was mentally ill and the entire family was feeding into it. He was working 2 jobs, was rarely home, and when he was withdrawn. Took a while before he realized what was going on and began to believe that David was actually possessed. And they say by the time that happened, it was too late. And Judy was becoming more and more concerned that David would hurt himself or commit murder. So they said Ed was pushing for an exorcism, and one day a cardinal showed up at the home, arriving dressed completely in red in a Porsche. And what was really funny in this moment was that they made a side comment that was like, "It's good to be clergy."
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, right? Porsche.
So he met with the family and authorized an exorcism. So this is the first exorcism at St. Joseph's Church, which is September 2nd. Okay, so this was the minor exorcism. This is the first exorcism that I told you about from the Warrens' point of view at St. Joseph's Church. And they said when they arrived for the exorcism, so it was Father Virgilac in both instances, and they said that he warned them that the process could be so intense it may result in death. So they proceeded.
On this 11-year-old boy.
David says he remembers arriving at the church and the start of the prayers, but that was it. So Alan and Arne kind of continue telling the story of the exorcism, and they say that they immediately realized something was wrong when David's behavior changed and the room became ice cold. Recordings of the exorcism that they play in the doc show growling, hissing, calling the priest names, the usual. So they talk. You'd be pretty impressed with some of those. It was creative.
Nice.
So they said David's features changed, his body jerked from side to side. He even broke free from them holding down to attack the priest. Now they said that Ed and Arne were holding his legs. So if you'll remember, when Ed told this story, he was at the family home. But the family says
4 people down.
The family says that Ed was there holding him down. So he broke free and attacked the priest. They said that David's body bent in unusual positions, and Arne placed a crucifix on David's forehead, and it began to sizzle. At one point, his tongue even swelled up. He couldn't breathe, and he turned blue. So at this point, this is when Arne challenges the demon and told it to leave David alone and take him on.
No wonder David doesn't remember a damn thing. How traumatic was that entire time?
Yeah. When you block trauma, that's exactly what it did. Also, what do you remember from when you were 11?
I mean, My 11 was traumatic, so not much, because my brain did its job.
There you go.
I was gonna
Brain
say.
does a thing where it blocks trauma.
Yeah, okay, so they say, the family says, during this exorcism is when Arne challenged the demon. And told to leave David alone and take him on. He said at that moment he felt something kind of ice cold wash over him. And then the Warrens were immediately like, what the fuck have you done? Not really like that, but pretty much. And they said that he had just opened the door for himself to be attacked by a demon. So after this exorcism, the family thinks everything is over. David is exorcised. They can return to a normal life with a new start. The family does not tell another story of another exorcism.
That's it?
That is the only story the family tells in this documentary of an exorcism.
Huh.
Okay? So, then Detective Glenn Cooper is interviewed about the murder of Alan Borno. He was the detective on the case at the time. He says that Ed and Lorraine did come to the police station one day and did tell them about Arne challenging the devil, and did say that, like, Lorraine was very upset, that they both seemed fairly normal. He didn't think they were crackpots, and that Lorraine warned that she saw serious injury or death with a knife. And that came from, like, the police detective. So,
You know what's interesting about that? In the article I read, the idea of some bad thing happening came from David, not Lorraine.
yeah. Because David, so at some point David said, like, something was gonna happen. And then Lorraine just kind of built on it. So all this puts us back from the family side of the story to February 16th, 1981. And I got a lot of versions of the story of that day. Arne says he woke up that day not feeling very well. He and Debbie traveled to Bridgeport to pick up his sisters because they had plans with them for the weekend to spend time together. They met Alan for lunch, where he was drinking and getting a little inebriated. Arne said he didn't want his sisters around this. So, like, they were trying to leave. He said he didn't think Alan was being inappropriate or anything. He was just kind of getting boisterous and he didn't want him in the situation. He says he went down the stairs and doesn't remember anything after that. So, from Arnie's point of view, it sounds like they had lunch at Alan's house, right? Because when you listen to the story from his sister's point of view, like, there's this whole, like, built out day with a fucking schedule, right? Like, we went to lunch.
Type A one.
Like, we went to lunch, we drank, like, he drank, we went back, he fixed the radio, we went and got pizza, we went upstairs, and then this happened. Like, Arnie's story is kind of like, we ate, he was drinking, we tried to leave, I went down the stairs, I don't remember anything. And he doesn't even say anything about, like, Alan grabbing his cousin Mary or anything. So I don't know if that's just, like, a difference in, like, him compressing the story or what.
Or if it was a period of, like, psychosis or something.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been. He could have kind of shortened it, because people also, if you're telling a story years later, you're not going to give the nitty-gritty details. She gave that story not long after the incident. He's giving this story in 2022.
Yeah.
So, alright, so David's story. He says that around 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, the phone rang. And I just want to tell you guys that when I wrote this, I first typed house phone. And then I remembered it was the 80s, and no, it's just phone then.
There's no other phone. There is only landline.
Oh. I did. I was like, fix that. All right. So he said 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, the phone rang, and Debbie was on the other end of the phone crying. He said he had a vision of a man dead that, so anyway, she told him what happened. David told Judy that Alan was dead and that Arne was possessed and had killed Borno. So David was now, like, scared. He was convinced that while possessed, Arne was headed towards their home and was coming to kill him. So with the help of his brother Alan, they started like locking doors and like moving furniture in front of the doors. And Alan said like he's never been afraid of Arne, but when David said that Arne was possessed and coming to kill them, like he was legitimately scared.
Yeah, because in one of the things I was looking at, it said that the whole reason David was at the house helping them move in is because David really liked Arne.
Yeah.
So he had volunteered to come help just to hang out with Arne.
Yeah. Like it's from the vibe I got, like everybody liked him.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get a vibe. Well, just wait. So
Wait for it. Let's not jump the gun.
Mm-hmm. So then Detective Glenn Cooper, which was the detective on the case, that evening he got a call from dispatch about a stabbing, calling for all hands on deck. The story he received was that Alan and Arne had been drinking, resulting in a fight that ended on the lawn. During the fight, Arne repeatedly stabbed Borno and then took off into the woods. An ambulance driver called in saying that they saw someone matching Arnie's description as they were taking Borno to the hospital. So Arnie's arrested, and Cooper describes him as looking as if he had been in a fight. He's totally disheveled. And Arne kind of keeps asking him, like, what's going on? And when Cooper told him that he'd killed Borno, he said Arne didn't cry, he didn't apologize, it was nothing. He just didn't believe him. He was like, no, I didn't, what are you talking about? And kept asking what was going on. The detective's also hearing rumors that Debbie had had a relationship with Borno, and Arne was a possessive guy, and that's what had resulted in the fight. So when he had asked Debbie about this, she did admit that there had been a relationship between her and Borno, but that it was over and the stabbing had nothing to do with it. But toxic masculinity said it probably did. So, this is where things get fun. Carl Jr.'s story! Alright, so Carl Jr. is the oldest of the three boys. He's about 15 at this time. And they kind of start out saying that, like, the mom, Judy, was religious. So Carl comes in and he's like, yeah, mom wasn't religious.
Nope.
She was not as religious as everybody said. She didn't start being religious until everything with David started. So...
Oh, interesting! Interesting!
So he said when Ed and Lorraine arrived on July 14th of 1980, Ed had asked him what he thought about the whole situation, and Carl told him that he thought his family was nuts. And he was very skeptical of Ed and Lorraine's agenda. So from his perspective, as the Warrens were interviewing the family that evening, they were really leading them on with what to do, suggesting what would be happening if there was possession, such as swearing, spitting, growling, etc. In the beginning, Carl remembers that the Warrens were coming over a lot, like every other day. And he never felt like they were focused on David. It was more like a production focused on recording everything and not focused on helping his brother. So every night, he said they had cameras, microphones, all of it ready to record. He does recount, this is kind of funny and kind of not. One night, he said that, like, David started having an episode and the family was out there trying to calm him down. And finally, his father comes out, and this is, I guess, before he gets on board. He comes out, and Carl hears his father slap David, and then, like, pick him up and sit him on the couch and starts yelling at him to stop and act right. And Carl said that quieted the devil right up.
Oh shit! Oh my god. So, child abuse isn't the answer for anybody listening.
It's not.
We do not condone child abuse. Child abuse is not funny.
This is also the 80s.
The context here is fucking crazy.
This is also the 80s and things were different. So...
Ain't nobody in that room call CPS, that's all I'm saying.
I'm just saying in the 2000s, that one time that I got my ass beat, I deserved it. And if CPS showed up, they would have been like, no, you're right, she deserved it, and left. So...
Times were different.
Alright, so the night Borno was killed, Carl Jr. was out helping his father with the truck, and he says he remembers his mom coming out and getting their dad to go to Debbie, so he apparently went with them. And when they arrived at the scene, Carl went over to Alan, rolled him over, and told him to hold on. He never thought that the murder of Alan had anything to do with David, like how people are kind of connecting it back because of possession.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned that Arne was really possessive of Debbie and about the murders between Debbie and Borno. So, we're going to come back to Carl. First, we're going to talk about the trial.
I'm still laughing at that. Shut the devil right up. Bruh.
It's like, he comes across like pretty fucking abrasive, at first.
Yeah.
Because he's very like, I don't believe this shit.
Yeah,
he doesn't, he doesn't buy it for a second. And
it really sounds like this kid was having mental illness episodes. And everybody's just like, the demons! No, get the kid help!
maybe. Like, anyway. So, who knows? Anyway. So, either way, Alan Borno's dead. So Arnie's defense, his defense lawyer says, like, he was not a believer of any of this, and so he wanted to do a bunch of research before he took the case on, because, they were going in with this possession defense. So he met with the Warrens, they played him the tapes, showed him the photos, laid out all the evidence, and he basically said, yeah, I find the evidence credible and believable, and believed Arnie's story. He believed he had been possessed by the devil when he murdered Alan Borno, and he also didn't think there was another lawyer in the state that would represent them. So,
no shit.
He took the case. So, the innocent by reason of demonic possession defense had never been used in the US at the time, but it had been used in England in 3 cases. Are you ready for this? This is nuts. 2 arson cases and 1 rape case, all of which returned a verdict of not guilty by demonic possession.
What the fuck?
And guys, I could almost let the arson cases go.
What?
But I'm really...
Yep, I'm right there with you. Oh my god. Arson cases? Sure, I'll take it.
Great.
3rd one, no way in hell.
I don't care what kind of mental break you had. If your mental break resulted in rape, you need to go away anywhere.
Locked up.
I don't care if it's a padded room or a concrete room, you need to be in one of them.
Okay, but I feel like... Did somebody die in the arson? Because that might be the same.
I don't know. I ran out of time to research the cases.
Gotcha.
I don't know. I have this weird thing. Rape, I'd rather be dead.
I mean, yes, but... Yes.
If you're gonna murder or rape, do the murder.
Yeah.
If you really have to do it, kill the person, then do it. At least they're dead and they won't be part of this.
Oh, that's a whole other...
That's a whole other level of crazy, but they're gonna get a longer sentence and maybe even the death penalty, so that's a different discussion, but...
A discussion on the cutout, but, I mean, that's just...
Well, geez.
my thinking. My bold thinking. If you burned a house, or... probably not you burned a house, well, whatever.
But, I mean...
Committed arson, great. I don't give a shit.
What if they
Isn't
burned
it
down a hospital?
Isn't it technically arson if they set a dumpster on fire?
Anything
Yeah,
that's
I
set
think
on
so.
fire that is not, I mean, even if it's your property, is arson.
Exactly. So, like, we don't know if it was just like, oh, let me try, like, I've never thrown a Molotov cocktail. I want to throw a Molotov cocktail. I bet I can throw it into this, like, steel fucking dumpster that will contain the fire.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What happens if I throw this Molotov cocktail into a construction dumpster? We're about to find out.
Don't tell me it doesn't sound like fun, because it does.
Oh, no, it absolutely does.
I'm not saying I'm gonna go do it.
For that.
I'm saying it sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it does.
Like, that sounds fun, and comparatively, not a bad crime.
Yeah. Ain't shit compared to, Alright, so... The first day of the trial is October 28th, 1981, and Alan says the family pretty much thought they'd find Arne innocent. The case was presented to Judge Robert Callahan, and Manella, which is the defense lawyer, was convinced that they would be able to present their demonic possession defense But it didn't get that far. Callahan ruled that it was not a relevant offense and would not admit any evidence on demonic possession or devils.
He said it wasn't... What did he say? Fuck, I can't remember what it was.
Relevant.
Yeah, right. It wasn't relevant and it would be unlawful.
So, at this...
You're a lawyer and you're trying to swing the possession. You can swing the... He's crazy, but he's
mentally ill.
Mental ill. Here's the reasoning. Here's the information and clips of voices that tell you he really believes this.
Well,
you can swing multiple personality disorder way easier than you can swing demonic possession.
Yeah.
In the 80s, was the case of momentary insanity a thing?
I mean, they have whole lunatic asylums, so...
Yeah, fair.
And sure, that's not the right word for today's age, but that was what it was called at the time.
Right.
Now we call them health hospitals. Back then, they were lunatic asylums.
Insanity started in 1843 as a legal defense.
1843, yeah. So they literally could have gone with other things that would have been a guarantee. But they went with ghosts and then whatever the other thing was.
Well, that's because what they were trying to do is not go to jail at all.
Right.
So they basically, after all the demonic possession and devil stuff was thrown out, they were left. This is beautiful. They were left with signed statements from Arnie's sister saying they saw him stab Borno. But without the demonic possession evidence, it just looked like a brutal stabbing. So now, they decided, well, we're gonna have to go for a self-defense strategy. Which is, not really gonna work that great. Because, self-defense is usually, 1 or 2 stab wounds, and we're talking 5 or 6, and one of them's quite large. But this is the only way they could try and avoid the 25 years to life sentence. And they also wanted Arnie to take the stand, which was going to be interesting if he didn't actually remember any of it.
Right.
So, November 24th, 81, we get to the verdict. He was found not guilty of first-degree murder, but he was found guilty of manslaughter in the first degree. So, when the judge gave him the sentence, he told him he had no alternative but to give him the maximum sentence allowed, which is 10 to 20 years in a maximum security prison. Debbie, there is video. Debbie completely believes Arnie was innocent.
I mean, she stayed with him and had kids. She 100% with her whole chest believed.
And then David said that Judy, his mother, was really upset about the demonic evidence not...
I killed Heather.
You
with
did.
her whole chest.
Judy was upset about the demonic evidence not being admitted because she wanted the story told and wanted people to know what was going on. And then 1985, Debbie and Arnie were married while he was in prison. They had 2 children. Arnie was released in 86. Debbie died in 21, and Arnie says he's no longer possessed and never had an exorcism. So.
Magically, only was
just after killing the guy, the demon popped out of him.
It didn't want to go to prison. So, let's talk about what Carl Jr. thinks about this. Because this is delightful. He doesn't believe it. He says that his parents...
Oh, really?
Yeah. He says his parents gave him money to go do whatever he wanted on the first day of the trial because they didn't want him to be involved because everything was fabricated. After the trial, he says his mom went to Hollywood, traveled on a jet, went to dinner with Dick Clark, and he describes her as being very excited, enjoying herself, and unable to believe that any of this was happening to her. He believes that Ed and Lorraine had an agenda from the beginning. The Warrens told his mother that they were going to write a book. I missed 4 words writing this. The Warrens told his mother they were going to write a book and had an author lined up. That guy was brought in. I think he was the same one that did the Amityville book. He was brought in to ask the family questions, and Carl recalls like Ed telling this guy to make the book scary despite the truth of what happened. And this is really where I think the dinosaur story came from. Because
you're not looking good right now, bruh.
Because when the interview with Ed and Lorraine had happened, that like I got their side of the story from, the book had already been published. So that is my belief. I don't know if it's true. Don't come for me.
So my belief,
allegedly.
My belief here, I'm down with them selling the book, but the family didn't seem like people with a lot of money for the wife to go to Hollywood and fucking get this shit done.
I think that like the Warrens fronted this. So they said one day that the Warrens showed up with paperwork for the mother to sign about the book. And Judy asked Lorraine, like, oh, should I get a lawyer? And Lorraine said that the publishing company had like a whole floor of lawyers. And Carl was like, yeah, those lawyers are for you, not for us. So his mother, really not knowing any better, signed off on this. And his family made $4,500 from the book, while Ed and Lorraine profited more than $81,000 plus all the revenue from movies like The Conjuring. And he outright said that he believes if the Warrens can profit off of you, they will. And he describes them as very good con people. So he said that the family's kind of scattered now. Nobody talks anymore, really. And after the death of Judy and Carl, their parents, this is where it gets really good, guys. This is, this is like the frosting on the cookie. Carl Jr. and his wife were going through his parents' things, and they found something that solidified his belief that there was never any demonic possession. Among his mother's things in one of her journals, he found a note that said, "The family had their medicine tonight and everything was good." So he continued to look through things and read more of her journals and found out that the medicine she was talking about was Sominex, that their mother was putting in their food, and she was dosing the family for a long time. And he actually recalled that his mother always had a separate bowl and never ate out of the serving bowl she put on the table for her children and husband. And he believed that she was using the Sominex to control everybody. So, and I did not look this drug up, this is what he said. Sominex has long-lasting effects if taken for an extended period of time, including mood swings, weight gain, and hallucinations. He believes that David, who was the youngest, 11, may have suffered some of these effects and that he did see things or thinks he saw things because of ingesting this so much. David, on the other hand, says that he was possessed and his mother would never drug the family. And those are my notes.
So, okay, Heather is completely shook by this.
What a bitch.
But, like, okay, sure, you guys find Carl Jr. to be super compelling, but anyone can say anything.
No, anybody can say anything.
Truly.
Anybody can say anything, totally.
I can say he sounds like some things are on point, and other things I'm like, yeah, anyone can say anything.
Yeah, totally.
But, though, I do find it weird that if David was drugged and hallucinating, if I was hallucinating, I don't think a slap's gonna stop me from hallucinating. Like, if I'm tripping balls, seeing stuff come for me and my dad slaps me, but I'm still tripping balls.
Well, if David was the youngest, he might have been getting two, like, depending on whatever her
If David was the youngest, he'd be dosed the hardest.
So
his body and his metabolism would not be like, he's fucked up.
Right. So, okay, so say this is a thing. So I just looked it up on drugs.com.
The best website.
It's reliable. All right. So it is an antihistamine that is used to treat sneezing, runny nose, watery eyes, hives, skin, itch, rashing, blah, blah, blah. It is also used to treat motion sickness, induce sleep, and to treat certain symptoms of Parkinson's disease. This medicine sleep aid is not for use in children younger than 12 years old. Many brands and forms of it. So may cause serious side effects. Stop using.
What is it called?
Sominex.
I have a
Severe drowsiness.
medicine.
Yeah, I know. Severe drowsiness, painful or difficult urination, dry mouth, constipation, and confusion may be likely in older adults. Common side effects are drowsiness, dry eyes, blurred vision, dry mouth, nose, or throat, decreased urination, constipation, feeling restless or excited, especially in children, daytime drowsiness, or hangover feeling. Not a complete list of side effects. Taking too much Simonix can lead to serious heart problems, seizures, coma, or death. And I'm just saying seizures, convulsing.
Yeah.
If it's true. I don't know that it's true. I can't prove that it's true. Do not use longer than 2 weeks.
Oh, it's because it's just like Benadryl's on steroids. Benadryl on steroids, that if you do take too many Benadryls, you'll fuck up your system real hard.
Yeah, an overdose
Actually do
can
make
be
it for
fatal.
children.
Overdose symptoms include vomiting, confusion, severe drowsiness, ringing in your ears, no urination, that's bad. Very dry eyes and mouth, dilated pupils, fast heartbeats, tremor, agitation, hallucinations, or seizure.
So, this kid was probably all fucked up from these drugs. And having all the side effects from it.
if it's true, yes. It's entirely plausible.
That kid needed a doctor. Either they needed a physical doctor or a mental doctor.
Wasn't there a doctor?
So, the doctor that they brought with them was a psychologist.
Oh.
Who determined him to be fine.
After what, 15 minutes?
Probably. and that's the thing, is from what I understand, and I could be wrong, he was only evaluated by psychologists.
Yeah, probably because the mother was drugging him and didn't want anybody to know.
Well, but also think about it. If you're saying, hey, possessed, are you going to get a psychologist, or are you going to get your primary care physician to see if you have a cough? You're going to consult mental health professionals because you think they have a brain problem. I mean, I personally would eventually go to a neurologist.
Yeah, true.
Because I know that things like tumors happen.
Because, like, if I'm hearing voices talking to me, I'm not going to go to my primary.
Right.
I wouldn't. If I'm hearing voices talking to me in the middle of the night, I'd be like, let's go check my brain.
I would, yeah, if you're, like, hearing shit like that, it might be time to check yourself in for a 48-hour hold.
I find it...
like, I'm probably not going to get a blood test. I'm just going to think I'm insane.
Yeah.
I find it much more likely that Carl is right, only because if David did end up having, you know, either a haunting or psychological issues, I feel like that would have been reported in a story and Avani would have found that. Right?
What?
I mean, it's possible I wouldn't
like
have.
after. Like the after. Like,
he says it says he's totally normal. Everything I've seen says he's totally normal.
Yeah, he had the fucking, what's it called, exorcism. He got better.
Yeah.
Couldn't find any aftercare on that. He had an exorcism, he got better.
Well, and he's lived like a super low-key life.
Yeah.
Right, but what I'm saying is if he did end up having... So, the only two plausible explanations, given the information we have, for me, is he was really possessed by a demon, or he was on drugs and then was taken off drugs.
So, for me, it's he has a severe mental health disorder. It is now treated, because if you go through that kind of trauma, you probably seek counseling.
Probably.
Probably.
But also, it's just what one brother says against what another brother says.
Yeah, which, well, in Alan and David, same page. but Carl not on the same page. So the middle brother and the youngest brother totally agree. Debbie agrees, but Carl is kind of the outlier.
No, like I discard Debbie, because if any of the stories that Carl says are true, discard Debbie.
Right.
We're just coming down to David, who the shit happened to, and then Carl was what, the middle child?
Carl was the eldest son, so it was Debbie, Carl, Alan, David.
So the middle child, who always has a problem, I'ma tell you. So it's just one brother against another brother. While I do think that they were exploited, I really don't see. It's just one against one. I can't really say if one of them's better, like
any more truthful. Yeah.
Carl can't tell you what David felt and what David was going through, but David can't tell you what's outside of his brain.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that also has nothing to do with Arne and murdering that dude.
Right.
Yeah, true.
And that's the thing.
All of this conversation has nothing to do with Arne murdering that dude.
Yeah, it's literally like they used the murder to capitalize on this like vague connection to David and David's experience and what supposedly happened to this family. But like knowing what we know about mental health now, first off, we know that people with mental health disorders tend to find other people with mental health disorders.
Yes.
So hi.
Yeah. Hi, friend.
Hi. Hello to our entire Discord channel. So it would be entirely, plus we know it's genetic. So it would be entirely possible that David did have a mental health disorder. That it probably was mild in at least one other person in his family. He had an attachment to Arne, who sounds like he probably had at least some emotional, like, inability to regulate emotions. So, because it sounds like, oh, he was really cool and a good kid, like, 95% of the time. But by the way, he was also kind of like a possessive asshole.
Yeah.
So, like, that other 5% of the time, he was, like, questionable at best. You know? Like,
right.
I'm good until you fuck with somebody I love, and then I will murder you.
Apparently.
But does everyone have that point?
I do. 110%. So, like, I don't, but the thing is no, like, there's only little bits of all the stories that line up.
Yeah.
That's what the only thing everybody agrees on is that Alan Borno died.
Yep. This guy died. That's the only thing we can agree on. There's like 8 of us, and everyone has a different story.
For real. That's excellent, though. All the different stories. Oh, that was very good. I enjoyed that.
That was a wild ride.
And 10 pages.
10 pages.
It was. Yeah, they did. So the doc did have like a little snip of Chris McKinnell, the Warren's grandson, in there. But he really didn't add anything of value, in my opinion. So I omitted what he had to say.
Yeah, it really sounds like Arne just lost his shit.
Yeah, it sounds like Arne lost his shit.
It
like,
does.
Arne had nothing to do with possession or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
While David's story is hit or miss, Arnie's is gone. Just, there's nothing there.
And okay.
There's nothing to look at here.
So let's just say Wanda's story, because it did. So this happened February 16th of 81. The article with her interview was published September 13th of 81. So this is the closest account that I found written down. Doesn't mean there isn't a closer one, just what I have. And she says that, like, and this is more detailed than what anybody else gave it that day. So if Alan really grabbed a 9-year-old's arm and tried to hold them back, what assumptions would you make about what he wanted to do? And would that not make you want to murder somebody?
Yeah, but then she said he let go, right?
Well, Debbie was able to get him to let go.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if you thought...
But also, that sentence is very ambiguous.
Mhm.
He got him to let go. What many things can you do to get someone to get off of a child?
Yeah.
That's a very ambiguous statement.
Well, so it says Debbie got Alan to let go, but Arne, like, had already seen what was going on and was, like, headed that way. So, I don't know. Was he just being protective because he grabbed a kid's arm? Was he making assumptions because there were things he had heard? Like, we don't know any of that.
And in the article I was reading, it said that Arne got down there before Alan let go.
Yeah, so what I got was that Arne was almost pretty much already at the car.
Yeah.
When he realized what was going on and went back.
Yeah. So there's the discrepancy of whether or not Alan still had the child.
Which to me it sounds like he did not. Like,
right.
From what pretty much everybody says, Mary was not in the middle. And the only people that were... Because even the stories you get later on from the family, like, it doesn't even seem like Wanda was right there like she said she was. It almost seems like it was just Debbie, Alan, and Arne.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that Wanda wasn't there. I mean, she's not really relevant.
Right.
Not to be a dick, but she's just not. Like, she can be there and not be relevant to the situation. But, the detective didn't mention her. None of the Glatzels did. Like, if she was, like, standing right next to them when the murder happened, I don't think that matters at this point.
I think all of those kids were just really fucked up from everything the adults around them did. I think that's just the end of the story there. Bad.
I think the 80s were a wild time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And it also didn't specify, right, whether or not Arne had been drinking.
So I heard two different stories. I heard that when they went to lunch, like, Arne and Debbie had like a drink or two, but nothing really excessive, nothing near what Alan was drinking, and I saw stories that didn't even mention them drinking at all.
Oh, okay.
So 50-50.
Yeah.
If they had anything I saw, it doesn't really sound like they became inebriated, but also, like, the story that comes from the detective, or the detective gets, does say that Arne and Alan had been drinking pretty heavily. Where is it? Yeah, okay, so it just says Alan and Arne had been drinking, resulting in a fight.
I mean, I don't think...
But that is also an ambiguous statement. When you say Alan and Arne were drinking, doesn't mean they were both drinking. One of them was drinking, but they were both together.
Yeah. So there's nothing really definitive. I don't even know at this point that you could figure out more than that.
Yeah. Damn, Arne.
And he got out after 5 years, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they said that he was like a model prisoner. So...
95% of the time.
Other 5%
I'm a model human being 95% of the time. Push me that 5% and see what happens.
Yeah. And you get the disappointed mom look.
But look, Mom, I did good.
You did great. That was fantastic. That was jam-packed with
Jam-packed with information and content.